All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Closer Look today. Thank you so much for joining us. I know this is a very busy time of year, so we're very excited to spend the next hour with you. My name is Paul Thompson. I'm the Senior Director of Conservation Programs at WCN, the Wildlife Conservation Network. I'm based in San Francisco, California, where the HQ for WCN is based. And at WCN, we protect endangered wildlife by supporting conservationists who ensure that wildlife and people can coexist in this rapidly changing modern world. And I think at WCN, what sets us apart is that N, that network in our name. It's not just a network of conservationists, but it's also a network of supporters. So that includes all of you. And these closer look webinars that we hold are meant to really design, or they're really designed to give you that direct access to the programs and the people that are out there protecting endangered wildlife all over the world. It's a bit of a peek behind the curtain, if you will. And throughout the year, we hold specific closer look webinars on programs or partners or locations. But then every December, we hold a very special one that is the state of WCN, where today is really a chance for you to get to learn about WCN in whole, how we operate, why we are different, what sets us apart, and then the collective impact that we're having for wildlife and people all over the world, thanks to you and your support. So now before we get started, a few logistics. So the first portion of today's webinar will be a presentation, and that will be followed by a live Q&A where we'll be answering your questions. So as you have questions, as they come up, please use the chat feature to ask your questions at any time during the presentation so that we can get to them afterwards. And also, like many of you have begun doing, please drop your into the chat sort of where you're from, the city or country where you live. It'd be great to see that. And so now we're going to introduce our esteemed speaker today, who is none other than our very own Dr. Gige Colombe, who is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of WCN. Gige started working with WCN back in 2012. And what many people may not know is that his origins begin with primates. So he began his career working with inspiring conservationists, studying chimps, gorillas, and mandrills in the Central African country of Gabon. And then for his PhD, he studied the effects of tourism on people's well-being around protected areas like national parks and conservancies in Namibia. And then Gige has worked his way up from lowly researcher running around in the forest to our fearless leader here at WCN, where he oversees 30 plus partners, or sorry, 30 plus staff, 22 of our core partners, 5 wildlife funds, and over 40 rising wildlife leaders. How he does that all, I'm not very sure, but I think it's his unique blend of his conservation chops combined with his adaptive leadership, and all anchored by a big heart. And I think it's that uniqueness that Gige brings to the team that makes WCN unique. So I'm very excited to hear from him today and for us to share with you everything that WCN has to offer. So without further ado, Gige, I hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Paul. I do all this because I'm surrounded by a great team. You are an illustrious representative of that team, a great set of conservationists, and a wonderful community of all the people who are joining us today. So let me share my screen and we'll get this started. This should hopefully all work well. Of course, it says it's paused, which is what also gave us issue a second ago. And let me try again then and get going. Of course, you try these things and there's always a little glitch.
Yeah, nobody said conservation is easy, and that includes our virtual webinars as well.
Yeah,
We'll
and it
sort it
still
out, I'm
says
sure.
it's paused, which is quite interesting. So let's try that completely again. Hold on 1 second. Let's get out. Of course, technical glitches happen, so deeply sorry about that. We're gonna walk out of here and we're gonna restart this. And,
There we go.
all right, now I think we're up and running. Cool. So yeah, wrangling cats, chimps, gorillas, elephants, and dealing with PowerPoint technology, which I can't do without all of your support. So thank you so much. Paul, thank you so much to our team. Thank you so much to all of you who are joining us this call today, for trusting and for investing in the Wildlife Conservation Network. As Paul said, I'm Gigi Collon, the CEO of WCN, and I really have the immense pleasure today to represent our team and our network of conservationists for a quick overview of what you've enabled us to achieve and what's in store for the Wildlife Conservation Network in 2024. So I'm going to start with a few illustrative milestones and accomplishments from the conservationists that you've generously supported. This is Machu Picchu, one of the seven wonders of the world. This ancient home to the Incas is also one of the most significant habitats for Peru's spectacled bears and a stunning variety of other wildlife. So working with the Peruvian government, our partner Spectacled Bear Conservation are helping strengthen and expand conservation for this unique area and its wildlife. In Namibia, investments from the Lion Recovery Fund have led to a 90% reduction in lion attacks on livestock and 0 retaliatory lion killings last year for a first time in a decade. The Saiga antelope, which was once on the brink of extinction with a population of only 48,000 individuals in 2005, has experienced an extraordinary rebound in Kazakhstan, and current estimates now surpass 1.9 million individuals, showcasing a triumph attributable to nearly 2 decades of dedicated conservation work by government agencies, research organizations, NGOs, such as our partner, Saiga Conservation Alliance, and all of your support. And so in a rare and remarkable conservation success, you may have seen lately that the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, has reclassified the Saiga antelope from critically endangered to near threatened on the red list, signifying a substantial global recovery for that species. And this positive shift, which was announced earlier in December, really highlights the tremendous efforts of national and international conservation initiatives and reminds us that we can have hope for positive change. And this year alone, over 56 species were protected by our rising wildlife leaders. So from the work of one of our scholars, Pema Kondu, on the critically endangered white-bellied heron in Bhutan here, to brown-headed spider monkeys, one of the most endangered primates in the world, to lions, tigers, and sharks. So not oh my. Our mission is to protect endangered wildlife by supporting conservationists to ensure that wildlife and people can coexist and thrive. We've invested in 68 countries around the world, impacting 136 different species of animals just this year alone. And we do so through 3 core and mutually reinforcing strategies. The first strategy is our partner network, our cornerstone strategy, where we identify, vet, and invest in field-based conservation organizations around the world. We have 22 partners in our network today, and we have several more in the pipeline for 2024 and even beyond. Our second strategy takes our pooled funding model to a different scale, combining donor funds and through careful governance and vetting and review process, granting out those funds to the best projects aimed at saving a threatened species throughout its entire habitat. So we started this with the Elephant Crisis Fund in partnership with Save the Elephants 10 years ago, when the ivory crisis was rampant throughout Africa. And today, a decade later, the poaching threat is no longer at crisis levels, and the Elephant Crisis Fund has been able to pivot and address the other threats to ensure that elephants can thrive in secure landscapes and alongside people. The ECF has invested in 31 of the 37 African countries with elephants, and the number of countries with a significant elephant poaching threat has declined from 26 in 2013 to just 6 as of 2023. So the threats have shifted, and we are now able to address other threats to elephants and explore other solutions. So there's a deep focus on human-elephant conflict. For instance, in Zambia's South Luangwa National Park, the ECF has supported the work of one of our grantees, the Conservation South Luangwa, and their coexistence work. They've developed a rapid response unit to swiftly respond to incidents of elephants raiding crops. The ECF has also enabled the training of local farmers in effective strategies to deter elephants from entering their fields in various harmless ways, such as low voltage electrical fence or smelly fences, or the planting of alternative crops that elephants don't like, such as these peppers that you see on this picture. We've helped reconstruct a number of elephant-safe grain stores for the community to protect their harvest, because elephants aren't easy neighbors. And the model of the Elephant Crisis Fund inspired us to port over this effort to other species: lions, pangolins, rhinos, and in a different twist for the connectivity of mountain lion landscapes here in California. And thanks to your generosity, we've raised over $110 million and supported almost 900 projects from 200 partners, or just about. The Lion Recovery Fund has invested in projects in about 45% of the lion range in Africa. One of its most inspiring impact is probably in Chinko Conservation Area, housed within a vast block of untamed land in Eastern Central African Republic and South Sudan. It's an area larger than the state of Washington, and that area has perhaps the greatest potential for lion recovery in all of Africa, and is one of the Lion Recovery Fund's most significant long-term investment sites, with grants to an organization called African Parks. So through anti-poaching and law enforcement efforts, as well as by engaging local herders who sustainably manage their livestock, African Parks has helped Chinko's wildlife populations dramatically recover over the past several years. It's estimated that thanks to these efforts, Chinko now houses thousands of ungulates, chimpanzees, at least 100 painted dogs, and up to 150 lions. So it's been a fantastic journey of recovery for this area. The Pangolin Crisis Fund has become the largest funding mechanisms dedicated to saving, sadly, the most trafficked mammals on Earth. Our work with the Pangolin Crisis Fund has actually been featured lately in the press, so make sure that you check out The Guardian or Manga Bay, and you'll be able to read about some of these efforts and hear from our Pangolin Crisis Fund director or one of our grantees. The PCF, the Pangolin Crisis Fund, gave its second largest grant to the Pangolin Project, one of those grantees featured in the press lately, to protect the last giant pangolins in Kenya. Giant pangolins face the greatest threats of all African pangolin species due to their size. In fact, the Pangolin Project just recently recorded an individual at almost 2 meters in length, which is huge. And so these animals are at greatest threat because of their size and therefore their value, and because they live in forest areas that are particularly vulnerable to habitat loss. So partners, grantees, the Pangolin Project aims to not only ensure the survival of the giant pangolins, but they also take a leading role in the protection, the rehabilitation, and the conservation of the entire ecosystems. With fewer than 27,000 rhinos remaining in Africa and in Asia, Poaching for rare horns and habitat loss continues to threaten the future of these distinctive giants. The Rhino Recovery Fund invests in the most effective organizations and projects dedicated to defending our remaining rhinos and supporting their recovery. So by funding these best efforts aimed at strengthening rhino anti-poaching, at ending demand for rhino horns, protecting rhinos' natural habitats, and really making rhinos relevant to the societies that live with them. The Rhino Recovery Fund and its grantees are helping restore healthy rhino populations across Africa and Asia. And in our home state of California, we're fortunate to have the highest biodiversity in the country. But it is at really high risk from habitat loss and fragmentation. So we adapted the Wildlife Fund model to conserve ecological connectivity, focusing on the unimpeded movement of species and the flow of ecosystem processes through a variety of projects, including land acquisition, road safety around wildlife crossings, and innovative policies. Our third strategy, Rising Wildlife Leaders, invests in the education and the growth of locally based conservationists, particularly those native to the region where they work and early on in their careers. Many systemic and historical factors have led to an underrepresentation of indigenous knowledge, people of color, female voices in conservation. And we strongly believe that the future of conservation must include all voices. And this is a long journey, but one that we need to accelerate. So by reducing the financial and the educational barriers for these emerging conservationists and providing them with mentorship opportunities, field support, WCN's Rising Wildlife Leaders programs really enable more local conservationists to become key leaders and establish long-term, locally led conservation management. So we approach all of our work through three lenses. The conservationists who dedicate their lives to wildlife, the supporters, all of you who make conservation possible, and the values that guide our work. Conservationists such as Jealous Poof of Painted Dog Conservation in Zimbabwe, whose dedication was recognized recently with a Tusk Wildlife Ranger Award. Several of you might have had the pleasure of meeting Jealous at expos or seeing him online when he participated, or if any of you have been able to visit Zimbabwe, maybe you stopped by Painted Dog Conservation and saw him doing his work. Well, Jealous is only one of the many conservationists around the world who represent their teams and the thousands of community members dedicating their whole lives to conservation and to wildlife. And these are the conservationists whom WCN aims to serve and support by understanding their needs and giving them a platform so that they can connect with each other, but also with all of you. Our partner network collectively employs over 1,100 local people as staff members, as anti-poaching scouts, artisans, mechanics, educators, and the many other jobs required to make conservation possible. And conservationists need support early on, which we do through this Rising Wildlife Leader strategy I mentioned earlier. We built on the success of our scholarship program, which has supported over 200 early career local conservationists to pursue degrees and advancing their careers by expanding it to include members of US-based indigenous tribes. We onboarded our second cohort of career program participants in Africa, which provides tailored access to training opportunities, facilitates peer learning, mentorship, and provides multi-year flexible financial support to these individuals to provide a strong foundation for them to stay in conservation and succeed in conservation. But none of this can be done by conservationists alone. So our second lens is about the relationships that we foster between conservationists and between all of you. It really is your passion, your trust, your generosity that fuels all of our work. Last year in 2022, you helped us raise about $45 million for conservation, which is a stunning amount. And We thank you for your generosity so that we can top that over the next 2 weeks, because the opportunities to do something good for the planet abound. There's nothing that gives us more hope than seeing you deep in conversation, whether it's in person or online with each other, with a conservationist, really engaged in the impact of the work of a trusted and vetted conservationist that we work with. So we thank you for everything that you do. From 2002 to 2022, you contributed about $268 million to wildlife conservation through 250,000 gifts, and 93% of those gifts were under $1,000. So there's absolutely no donation that's too small, and of course, none are too big either. We highlight that number not just because of the number itself, but because of what it has allowed WCN and our partners to do for wildlife and for communities around the world for the past 21 years. It started from pretty modest beginnings, which maybe several of you might have been a part of, and we've been really humbled by your ongoing trust and generosity over the years. As we've grown our revenues, we have grown our impact. We've grown our team. We've grown our community. And throughout all this growth, we remain committed to the values that guide our work. We honor our supporters' investment with financial transparency, accountability, and efficiency. You deserve to know the impacts of your investments, which you can do by being directly in contact with conservationists, by email, by signing up for their newsletters, following them on social media, meeting them at expos, visiting them in the field. As you know, when you designate your contribution, well, we guarantee that 100% of that contribution goes to the program that you designated. And if you appreciate the services that we at WCN provide to you and to the conservationist, please consider making an incremental contribution to WCN itself to enable us to do the proper vetting, the due diligence, the training for conservationists, the convenings at Expo online, and all the grant administration, all this added value. So thank you to all of you who support our work at WCN. And as we provide that added value, we honor our commitment to efficiency, with at least 90% of our expenses go into programmatic impact. Community, as I've mentioned, is at the heart of all of our partners' conservation programs. Conservation cannot be done without local people, but community extends globally, as everybody on this call is part of that community. So we bring people together to save wildlife because everyone has something to offer to support our mission. We believe in egoless collaboration so that we can work through partnerships to have a bigger impact for wildlife. And good partnerships to us require a service-oriented mindset. We ask ourselves, what can we do for others? What can we do for you? So we ask and we listen to the needs of conservationists, of donors, of local communities. And last but not least, we focus on impact. We seek measurable results using data, metrics, facts, and feedback to inform our decisions, push us towards improvement, and inspire innovation, whether it's in the field or in our engagement with you, so that we can have the greatest impact for wildlife. That impact's really enhanced because of the kinds of organizations we work with. They have deep local roots, they understand the dynamic human context and all the interconnections of the challenges and the solutions at hand. Threats to thriving wildlife and human communities are both local and global. They're tied to climate change, to global health, environmental justice. And so the solutions we work towards cut across all these sectors. The impacts that your support enable the conservationists to have is never about one species alone. It's about landscapes, it's about ecosystems, it's about people. Investing in wildlife is more than just investing in wildlife. And so we see a world of opportunities to get more people involved in supporting conservationists around the world. The heart of WCN, as I've mentioned, is really based on relationships. So whether it's online, at large events, or small events in the Bay Area, or hopefully beyond the Bay Area, or if you have the opportunity to travel and connect with conservationists in the field, we want to foster all those opportunities for us to come together, sharing not just the inspiring stories of the people and animals in the field, but also your stories, how your philanthropy is meaningful to you and the impact that you can have on people and wildlife. And by extension, everyone is a conservationist. So we all have a role to play in getting more people and different kinds of people connected to the work that we're so passionate about. It's important to not just keep that for ourselves, but also to share it with everyone, to bring more people into the fold. I think this is ultimately mutually beneficial because it isn't just about what people give to the community, but it's also what they get from being part of this community, what they get from being on a call like this, or attending an event, or visiting a conservationist, or hosting a dinner where you talk about this with friends and peers, and really make the pie bigger so that we get more people involved in this important field. We see opportunities for bold efforts through our wildlife funds, such as helping in the reintroduction of 2,000 rhinos in Africa, which will start in 2024, doubling down on disrupting the illegal wildlife trade that sadly pangolins are a sad poster child for, facilitating the awareness and the adoption of really creative techniques for people to be better neighbors and coexist with tough animals such as elephants and other wildlife, and expanding and securing vast landscapes for lions, as well as key corridors for connectivity for other species, including in our own backyard in California for mountain lions. These wildlife funds really offer truly scalable opportunities to absorb and efficiently deploy millions of dollars across the entire range of some of these species. And because we pool all this funding together, no one person has to be responsible for all of that. So all of your donations add up to these millions of dollars that can be deployed over these really large landscapes and impact species across our range. And we see opportunities to show that wildlife conservation is more than just wildlife conservation, as I've mentioned. It's intertwined with efforts to secure and manage larger landscapes, which is aligned with sustainable development goals of protecting 30% of the planet by 2030, potentially connecting to the carbon economy, helping people and animals mitigate the effects of climate change. And we know there are real concrete opportunities right now from conservationists in our network, and an interest from many of you to explore how to generate and deploy more funding to support these efforts to expand the conservation footprint and be able to manage it. And these opportunities beyond wildlife, they're also opportunities beyond landscapes. They're opportunities to support more diverse groups of people, especially people who have traditionally been left out of formal decision-making for conservation and whose voices are really important, who play leadership role in their communities. For instance, we've established a working group of women involved in conservation to expand a pilot funding mechanism and explore external partnerships to enhance opportunities for women in rural communities, primarily in Africa at the time being, to start or scale up impactful, innovative, and sustainable projects that are aligned with wildlife conservation objectives. We see opportunities to support more conservationists around the world because there are so many different species, landscapes that need protection. And frankly, there are so many different groups that are doing really wonderful work. So we're always looking, getting to know and vetting conservationists, working on a wide array of endangered species. And it takes time to find some of these organizations. We've got staff that go out and talk to a number of people and visit these potential organizations in the field, getting to know them, understanding their needs, understanding how we can help and how they can enhance the impact of our network and the impact of your philanthropy. This could include Bornean elephants, brown-headed spider monkeys in Ecuador, or coral reefs potentially. And when we look at all these opportunities, we look at it because we think diversifying our portfolio of partners and projects is really critical because, as I said, a number of these are there are a number of organizations and species that need the help, but it's also that they all bring something new and unique to the network. They make the network more than the sum of the parts. They expand our opportunities and your opportunities to have impact on more threatened species, on more landscapes, but also enriching what we learn from one another and what they learn from each other when they get together. As I said, there are many, many different groups that do great work. They're scattered around the four corners of the globe. It's hard for them to find people like you, and it's hard for you to find them. So we offer this unique opportunity to vet these organizations, to bring them into the network, efficiently ensuring that your funds can reach the front line of conservation. And that opportunity to directly support frontline organizations is really important because these organizations are embedded in the landscapes that support communities and wildlife. Far too few philanthropic dollars actually reach the front lines, especially in the international context. So we have the opportunity to connect you to these incredible local civil society organizations and communities who ensure that there is a coexistence future for wildlife and people. We know how to do so efficiently and effectively. We are able to help identify, vet, and incubate some of these local nonprofit organizations, performing the due diligence on your behalf, and really de-risking the re-granting process for your philanthropic dollars and seek maximum impact for wildlife. So we see opportunities to continue to really anchor our work in all of these relationships, relationships with you, relationships with conservationists, relationships that have made our success to date. We're here to serve you, our community of supporters united in this passion for wildlife and for people. And we feel really privileged, humbled, and honored to help connect you to these vetted, effective conservation organizations so that your giving can be as impactful as possible. So I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity, for giving conservationists the opportunity to do what they do best. And I really look forward to our conversation and to achieving so much more together in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, GJ. Yeah, fantastic overview of the impressive breadth of work that WCN is helping and able to support. So folks who are tuning in, please, if you have any questions for GJ or for myself, use the chat feature. Unfortunately, we're not able to pull people up onto screen, so just drop your question into the chat. To kick things off, Gigi, I'm gonna kind of like go back in time. So how did WCN come about, and how did WCN sort of take this unique approach towards wildlife conservation that is rather than having our own teams in the field and our own projects, this idea of having a lean machine here in California that's getting as much resources out there to the field?
Thanks, Paul. I think the origins of WCN came from two big realization. One is that in order for wildlife conservation to be successful over the long term, it really needs to be anchored in local conservation efforts with organizations that are rooted in those countries and in the communities where they work, so that we can understand the needs of the people who are living in the same landscapes as these animals. And so when WCN started, it really sought out these organizations that were connected to communities. That was the first thing. The second part, because we always have this duality of the focus on conservationists, but also the focus on all of our supporters, is creating this direct connection with all the people here who share this understanding that conservation is holistic, want to support organizations on the ground, but don't necessarily have all the tools to find the right organizations. And so WCN is really created to be as paper thin as possible and vetting the right organizations and then bringing them to giving them a stage and a platform to potential people who want to support them, and making that as efficient as possible with a 100% model where folks can designate their donation so that it goes directly to those groups on the ground. That was the idea from our founders, who felt that there was a gap in the philanthropic space to really provide that service of connecting supporters here efficiently to vetted organizations on the ground.
So on the point of vetted organizations, let's dive into that a little bit. We had a question from Diana who asked for a summary of how organizations are chosen to receive funding from WCN. So maybe you can give a kind of a high level
Yeah,
summary of that.
that's a great question. There are way more organizations out there who deserve the kind of heavy support that we provide than what we can actually provide. But that's part of our growth. I think we hope to be able to get more of those organizations in. We look for organizations that work with endangered species, but at the same time have a wider view of that. So all of the work of the conservation partners we work with extends beyond those species. In a way, they're able to articulate their work around a particular species, but their work really is impactful at the level of the landscape and the communities that they work with. So that often means that these organizations have it's called a community led conservation approach, being focused more on conservation action than research. We look for organizations I've mentioned in the presentations that are based in those countries and communities. We look for organizations that have a clear track record of early success and a long runway of future potential to scale and have more meaningful impact. So we like to kind of catch them early on and then help to accompany them in their growth. We look for organizations that share our values, so that they can be good partners to all of you, but also to the rest of the community of conservationists with whom we work. And we try to have some diversity in that portfolio, a diversity of species, of geography, of people, and balance that all out.
And so Chris asks, if I have a favorite charity that could benefit from the WCN network, how can I go about recommending that they get involved?
I think send us an email. We're always happy to get names of potential organizations. We have a long pipeline of organizations that we consider. It takes a long time for us to get to know these organizations because we go in pretty deep. So we consider a pretty long vetting process, but it starts with just being aware. So send us the name and we'll look at it. I will, just in case people have this in mind, we look for organizations that are anchored in those countries. So a large US-based organization that has field teams scattered throughout the world is probably not the best fit for our partners. There are other ways that we can support those organizations, maybe through the wildlife funds. But for a partner network, we tend to look for locally based conservation organizations.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, right? That as part of this due diligence and vetting process that Gigi just described, we're always looking for the next organization that we can help. And our support can come in many different forms, whether it's becoming part of our core partner network or whether it's receiving a specific grant through the wildlife funds, or whether it's providing a scholarship to an individual. Like there's multiple touch points that WCN can help with. And the best thing to do is if you think you have a great organization, like Gigi said, just send that to us and we can put it on our radar. And we have this, like you described, this long list of organizations that we're sort of supporting or looking into and getting to know over time. And then also, if WCN's not the right fit, we're absolutely happy to help make connections or open doors or introduce them to other organizations that we know of that might be a better option for that thing. But yeah, it can't hurt to sort of share whatever you know with us. So thank you.
Paul, on the flip side, I'll also say that if people have questions about particular charity that they've heard and they want to know if they're a good place to invest in, let us know. We're happy to provide some feedback. There are some great organizations that we would happily endorse who are not part of WCN, but we think they do great work, and we're happy to share our insight with all of our supporters so that you can make sure that your philanthropy is as effective as possible.
Yeah, great. Um, all right, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit. So going back to when you were doing some research in Gabon on primates, did you ever think that one day you would be the CEO of an organization that is our size and breadth?
No, I can answer that quickly. Never in my wildest dream. I'm not sure if that's actually a correct expression. I was always just driven by a sense of having impact and a sense of excitement and enjoying what I do. And I discovered pretty early on that even though I thought I wanted to study chimps and gorillas, um, walking for 6 to 8 hours a day in sweltering heat and picking through gorilla nests, which tend to be quite smelly because that's also where they go to the bathroom, is not necessarily the most glamorous way forward. And at the same time, I was seeing the spread of logging companies throughout Gabon decimating those habitats. And that's when I switched from wanting to just study these animals to protect them. And I realized also I had a particular knack for being a connector. I love helping people. I love connecting people. It probably took me, yeah, a good 15 years and time spent on a PhD and other things to realize that WCN is the perfect place for me to do this. I mean, this is what our founders, Charlie Knowles, John Lucas, and Akiko Yamazaki kind of set up WCN to do, is to be that platform that connects people who want to help with people who need the help. And it's perfect for what I want. But I never thought I would end up in an organization like this or leading an organization like this that has grown like a rocket ship for the past 20 years. And as I said at the beginning, I feel very blessed to be supported by a wonderful team, wonderful group of supporters, many of whom are on this call, and really extraordinary partners in the field. I think our success and our growth is fueled by these individuals and their teams who have this vision to be impactful for the various species and landscape that they work with.
So we have some students joining us today. And Mandy, who's about to graduate from college, asked how they can get some field experience before pursuing an advanced degree. Maybe you can reflect on some of the tactics you use to get to where you are to offer some advice to our aspiring conservationists.
Yeah, I think the world's probably a different place nowadays than it was when I first started over 20 years ago. But I think, yeah, getting out in the field. I think the best advice I got was from a professor of mine who had studied with Jane Goodall and spent many years in Africa. He said, Gige, what you need to do is not get another degree right now, is you need to go and sit under a tree and protect it and engage with people and the animals. So any opportunity people have to do that, I think is great, which often means saying yes to whatever comes up. So I think I've been very fortunate to just be at the right place at the right time and to keep an open mind as to where those opportunities are gonna come from, to network and to build on that experience. It's not a linear path, and there's so many different ways for people to contribute to wildlife conservation. some of which may not even be directly related to studying animals. I think wildlife conservation needs all kinds of people. It needs scientists that also deal with sociology, economists, but it also needs non-scientists, people who can help tell great stories, people who can uh, people who can be great accountants to help support these organizations keep clean books. There's so many different ways in which people can help. So keep an open mind, say yes to a lot.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that that it's not necessarily approaching organizations and asking how you can help. It's more approaching organizations and offering them clear ways you can help because conservationists are so busy, especially those folks in the field, that they can't sort of come up with ideas for you. You need to demonstrate to them that you are dedicated, willing to do everything like GJ just described, and that you have specific offerings, skills, technical experience, what have you, that will be a benefit for them. So yeah, utilize that network. Okay, here's a question from Allison about how WCN links different organizations and kind of plays that connector bridge role, especially those that are working across international boundaries and borders.
Great question. I mean, the N in our work of in our name of network is really important. So we do this in several ways. Um, at the core with our network of 22 partners, whenever we organize expos, we bring these organizations together physically. We provide training on topics that they select, and we foster connections between them. I even say, we don't have to do that much. We could just lock those people up in a room and leave them there for 2 days, and the amount of wisdom that they all have would be tremendous, and they would just find ways to share and learn. But we do try to provide a bit of structure to that. We've expanded that to provide some of that sharing also online, so we can offer a lot of that opportunity for formal training and exchange between conservationists virtually. And that's kind of direct one-to-one, and people can take advantage of it as they see fit. There are also less visible ways that we provide some of that exchange. So in the context of wildlife funds, our wildlife fund directors are privy to an incredible amount of information because they see hundreds of grants. And the wildlife fund directors that work on elephants, lions, rhino, pangolins, and mountain lion habitats here also talk to each other. And they may see multiple grants coming from grantees that are operating in different landscapes that have some benefit of working together. And so they could tell one grantee, you really should talk to this other person. We might even be able to put an add-on grant for $5,000 to facilitate a conservationist to go visit another conservationist and learn from each other, which we also do actually within the network. So you don't see that on our website, but that happens behind the scene, and we seize those opportunities whenever we can. One of the big things that we try to foster is building synergies across our three strategies: our partner network, our wildlife funds, and our rising wildlife leaders. And so whenever we see opportunities to connect one to another, we try to take advantage of it.
All right, I want to ask you about some of the challenges that WCN is seeing right now. So not just the ongoing ones around like having more organizations that need our help than we could possibly support, but like what are the kind of issues that WCN's wrestling with as we get into the new year?
Um, Maybe you can clarify. I'll try to answer it at two levels, but one is, if we look at kind of external factors, the world is not a healthy place at the moment. There are lots uh, of of challenges that conservationists face. Um, I think wildlife conservation is actually one of those wedges that connects a lot of these issues related um, to climate change, related to providing opportunities for people, marginalized communities, for people in around the world. So I think the holistic aspect of conservation is a challenge that we provide a solution to through the work of the conservationists. Some of these other challenges are, yeah, the world is as we've said, particular turmoil right now. So there's a lot of competing things. It's easy to get depressed about the state of a world, to lose hope. And people might feel disengaged. They might feel like, what's the point of trying to protect animals or trying to protect these landscapes? And I think conservationists have to fight that. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think that's part of our role, is trying to convey to people this sense of hope. And the moment you talk to one of a conservationist, or if you go online and watch one of the expo presentations, I think you get refilled with hope, and you think that we can do good. And so it's important to invest in wildlife conservation. At a more internal level, I think we really value relationships. And so maybe some people on this call are wondering, well, as WCN is growing, am I going to be able to retain the same level of connection and access that I've had before? And I want to assure folks that that is something we are always mindful of. And so we approach growth in a two-track way of wanting to have as much of an impact as possible, but also not losing the essence of what has made WCN successful, and the genuine relationships that we're able to foster amongst us, with the supporters, but also between supporters and conservationists. So it's not easy, but I think it's very doable if we approach it in a smart and intentional way forward.
We're rapidly approaching the top of the hour, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions pulling from the audience. The first one comes from Daily Divine, if I'm saying that correctly. What is WCN's policy on the role of traditional knowledge and traditional cultural practice in biodiversity conservation? So maybe you can speak a little bit more about how community-based conservation is key to our DNA.
Yeah, it is. So we don't have a policy per se, but as Paul says, it's really in the fabric, and it was in the foundation of WCN, that we believe conservation is most successful when it's anchored in local knowledge and local leaders. And so many of the conservation partners we work with either embody that directly, or have that also as a foundational value of their work, and work hard to engage traditional leaders, if that's appropriate. It's not always traditional leaders in that same sense, from Africa to Asia to Latin America, but try to engage all those different segments of the communities they work with, tap into that level of knowledge, record that knowledge sometimes, and try to port it over. I think, for instance, of the work that Grevy's Zebra Trust has done in northern Kenya, and how they've really tried to restore healthy landscapes by holistic rangeland management, tapping into ancestral practices that enable pastoralist communities to bring good grasslands back to life, which is good for livestock, but also good for the Grevy zebras of the Grevy Zebra Trust, and ultimately also good for predators that can feed on all this. So it's a very mutually synergistic relationship.
We've got a question from Diana that's kind of focused on the role of government for WCN and our partners and conservation. Do we help local organizations connect with government officials for support? Maybe you can speak about kind of where WCN interfaces with government and where we don't.
Yeah. So I think it's a big difference between WCN and some other international organizations. We really put and shift the power over to our local partners, and we think that they're the best um, placed organizations to connect with their own governments. But at the same time, we're very mindful of a role that we can play. So sometimes they can bounce things off from us, and there are things we might be able to say um, from an external perspective that they might not be able to say. So we're mindful of that role we can play, but we don't have a government policy arm at WCN itself. We support our partners to engage in those fora when necessary. And we think that really is the most impactful way, because if you're an organization in a particular country, it is really your heritage, and you're carrying that forward and engaging with your government officials rather than some Western-based organization telling some other government what to do. So the power of our local partners is really strong, and they can learn from each other about how to do that more effectively in their own countries rather than relying on us and our international status.
Great. Well, thank you, Gigi. This has been a great conversation, some really good questions from the audience. Yeah, and I'll just put it on you if there's anything else you wanted to end on. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up.
I want to end on a note of gratitude. And this holiday season, I want to wish everybody happy holidays, but I want to express our extraordinary gratitude from me personally, from our entire team, from all the conservationists and the communities that they represent, for the trust and the generosity of our community. We can't do this without you. Um, and we really think that we're in this together. So if there's anything that we can do to help better connect you to your conservation interests, let us know. Um, we're always there to answer questions, and we look forward to doing wonderful things in 2024.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. As I mentioned at the top of the call, the network includes all of you, and we just can't do it without you, like Gigi said. So in this holiday period, thank you so much. Please take care of yourselves. Join us in early January. The next one of these closer look webinars is actually January 19th at noon Pacific with Rachel Graham from the Mar Alliance Conservation Group, which works with marine species. I will also say that we currently have a match going. So if you're considering making a year-end donation, now is a terrific time. So all gifts to WCN will be matched dollar to dollar up to $100,000 through December 31st. So if you're able, please consider helping our work so that we continue our mission, can continue our mission helping ensure people and wildlife coexist and thrive. Thank you all for spending the last hour with us. We really appreciate it. Pay attention to some of these links in the chats, and then reach out to us. And a lot of questions came up that we would love to hear from you directly. So please contact us, send us an email, and otherwise have a very safe and wonderful end of the year. Thank you so much.